The little girl's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the polished silence of the hotel lobby like glass on marble. Her small hands clutched the fraying strap of a duct-taped backpack, her untidy bangs falling into her wide eyes as she stared up at the tall man in a charcoal suit. "I don't have a dad. Will you be my daddy forever?" she pleaded, her lip trembling, her voice breaking at the edges. For a moment, the busy world around them, heels clicking on tile, the barista calling out lattes, the lobby fountain splashing softly, blurred into silence. The man, a CEO known for deals that shook boardrooms, froze as though someone had reached straight into the armor around his chest. No one had ever asked him a question so disarming, so impossible, and yet so achingly human. Hours earlier, the girl had been sitting outside a corner cafe in the drizzle, knees drawn tight to her chest, watching passers-by disappear into the glow of warm interiors. Her mother, a young widow, had stepped inside to beg for a part-time shift. The woman's black coat was missing 2 buttons, her once stylish boots worn through at the heel. She carried herself with the poise of someone who had once been admired, her high cheekbones and graceful neck striking even beneath exhaustion. But her eyes told the real story, red-rimmed, hollowed by sleepless nights, darting nervously between strangers. At home, their fridge light flickered against empty shelves, holding only half a carton of milk and a limp carrot. The rent notice was curling yellow on their apartment door. Inside the cafe, she leaned on the counter, trying to sound casual as she asked about any openings. Her fingers brushed back strands of hair that had slipped free from a hurried bun, and her throat tightened when the manager shook his head apologetically. She counted coins at the self-check, out earlier that morning just to buy her daughter a bread roll, and the thought of another night with nothing gnawed at her like hunger itself. That was when he noticed them. Ethan Ward, the lonely CEO with a reputation for precision and untouchable wealth, had been standing by the window with a laptop open, sipping espresso while reviewing contracts. His shoes shone like mirrors, his tailored suit a perfect cut of authority. Yet behind the reflection in the glass, he saw the girl waiting on the wet bench, hugging her patched backpack, and the woman inside fighting not to look defeated. Something about the fragile dignity in their posture stirred a memory of his own childhood. A cramped basement apartment, a mother who skipped meals to feed him, her weary smile disguising hunger, he remembered. And it unsettled him more than any business loss ever could. When the woman stepped back out into the drizzle, shaking her head faintly at her daughter, the girl only smiled and squeezed her mother's cold hand. "It's okay, Mama," she whispered, though her stomach rumbled. They started down the street, shoulders hunched against the wind. Ethan closed his laptop without finishing the email he was typing. He followed, almost against his own logic, his polished shoes clicking through puddles. Something kept him tethered to the sight of them. The re-hook came moments later when a car splashed water across the sidewalk. The girl stumbled and her backpack slipped open, spilling out school worksheets smudged with pencil, a cracked plastic ruler, and a tiny stuffed bear missing one ear. The mother bent quickly to gather the mess, apologizing to strangers who barely glanced at her. Ethan knelt down instinctively, handing the bear back to the child. Their eyes met, and in that second, her words would etch themselves into him forever. "I don't have a dad. Will you be my daddy forever?" The innocence in her request was crushing, like she had mistaken his polished presence for safety itself. The mother's face flushed crimson. She pulled her daughter close, stammering, "I'm so sorry, sir. She doesn't know what she's saying." Her graceful hands trembled as she adjusted the torn strap on the backpack, trying to appear composed, though humiliation burned in her cheeks. Ethan only studied her, noticing the weary lines that should not have belonged to a woman still so young, the way her coat was too thin for the weather, and the quiet pride she clung to even while apologizing. "Don't apologize," he said finally, his voice quieter than he intended. His throat felt tight, He wanted to ask a dozen questions: where they lived, if they were safe, how often they ate, but the words tangled against his usual restraint. Instead, he reached into his pocket, drew out a business card, and pressed it gently into the mother's hand. "If you ever need anything," he began, but the sentence collapsed under the weight of its own inadequacy. She hesitated, her eyes narrowing as if bracing for pity. She had seen that look before, charity that felt like a wound. Her hand curled around the card slowly, uncertain. The girl, still hugging the bear, looked up with hopeful eyes that seemed far too knowing for her age. The three of them stood in the chill evening air, the city rushing around them, but inside that small circle, time dragged heavy. Then the rain began to fall harder, plastering the mother's hair against her cheek. She whispered, "We should go." But before she could lead her daughter away, Ethan asked, almost against himself, "Do you have somewhere warm tonight?" The hesitation in her eyes, the slight flinch, was answer enough. The moment hung fragile, poised between dignity and desperation, and as the little girl leaned against her mother's leg, still clutching the bear, her voice broke the silence again. "Mama, I'm hungry." The mother's eyes shimmered, caught between shame and sorrow, and Ethan realized he couldn't let them walk into the rain. Ethan's jaw tightened. Decisions in the boardroom had always been calculated, weighed, and timed, but this one came from somewhere deeper, somewhere raw. He shrugged off his suit jacket and bent down, draping it gently across the little girl's shoulders. Her small frame disappeared inside the expensive fabric, but her eyes lit up faintly, a flicker of warmth against the night. "Come with me," he said, his tone firm but not commanding. The mother's lips parted, as if to protest, but exhaustion muted her voice. Pride wrestled with necessity in her eyes. She studied him for a long moment, the rain dripping down her cheekbones, before she finally gave a slight nod. They walked together through the streets, an unlikely trio. The city's neon lights reflected off wet pavement, and the little girl's tiny hand found Ethan's. He didn't pull away. At the hotel, the lobby clerk raised a brow when Ethan entered with the drenched mother and child, but one look from him silenced any questions. He booked them a suite, warm, spacious, glowing with soft lamps, and as the door clicked shut behind them, the woman's composure fractured. She pressed her palms to her face, muffling a sob. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We don't need your charity." Ethan shook his head. "It's not charity. It's something I should have done a long time ago, for someone who once needed it, like I did." His voice trembled, surprising even himself. The girl climbed onto the couch, hugging her one-eared bear, eyes half closed with exhaustion, but still watching him like he was the answer to every wish she'd ever made. "Daddy," she murmured again, softer this time, as though testing if the word would still be heard. Something in Ethan's chest gave way. He crouched down to her level, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "Maybe not forever," he said honestly, "but tonight I'll make sure you're safe, and tomorrow we'll see." The little girl smiled faintly, already drifting toward sleep. The mother sat silently, torn between gratitude and fear, yet the weight of survival lifted, if only for tonight. For Ethan, deals worth millions had never once made him feel this human.